You guys, recently we had a speaking test with one of our students, Samantha. So in this video, let's break down how she literally performed. Did she actually perform to the expectations of the examiner? The points she missed, as well as the strategies she will incorporate in her speaking so as to align with the banned scriptures. So guys, let's get started. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, now this was the speaking test that I had with Madam Samantha. Now let's first look through and give some feedback. How did she even answer the test? First look at before we even have a look at this test, let's first look at the marking guide. What's the marking guide? That's the band descriptors, the IELTS band descriptors. So now let's first look through here the IELTS speaking band descriptors. So right here we have fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and finally pronunciation. But the terms that are used right here are kind of complicated. That's why I'm trying to break it down. So right here we have fluency and coherence. Fluency, what does fluency mean, and coherence? There's some complicated vocabulary which they use here. Lexical resource, the same thing like vocabulary. I'm seeing some idiomatic language. Grammatical range and accuracy, there are some two terms right here. Range, that means you need to vary your grammar, but you must use that of the question first, and finally accuracy, so you have to be accurate. No grammar mistakes. Pronunciation, let's first break this down in a moment. So right here, like I told you before, we have fluency and coherence. Fluency simply means speaking smoothly. Let's just go each of them one by one. So it just simply means speaking smoothly. Yes, reduce on less pauses, reduce on that hesitation. Let it feel natural. And coherence means logical. Coherent means logical, so it has to make sense to the person listening. So you have to also not over repeat words going back and forth, and then ideas must connect. That's coherence, making it very easy to follow through even to a layman. So what's the format I always give? You first answer the question. For instance, do you like reading? And then you say, absolutely, yes, reading is my cup of tea. So you first answer the question saying, yes, it's my hobby. Yes, I love it. Then you give the reason, simply because so and so, simply because I find it educative. So, and then you give an example or an instance when you went to the library and read a couple of, some storybooks. So that's REE. You first reply, give the example, and then you explain or whatever. So lexical resource. Forget about this word. This word is the same as vocabulary. So expect you to give some idiomatic language. You don't need to overput in idioms. Just one idiom is enough. Topic-related vocabulary. This simply means that you're giving in some vocabulary that is connected to the topic. For example, advertisements. You could say billboards, online ads, commercial advertisements, things of that sort. So you also need to use some academic language. For instance, instead of special, you can say iconic. Big, you can say magnificent. Buy, you can say purchase. Some idiomatic language can include a stone throw away, that means it's near, once in a blue moon rare. So that's all what they look for in lexical resource. Think about speaking as a section whereby they are only looking out for what's included in the IELTS band descriptors. And I think lexical resource is paraphrasing, very important. If you ask you, do you like reading? Don't say, yes, I like reading. You are copying the exact words of the question. So stay away from that. Try to give some synonyms, change the wording of the question, but maintaining the meaning. If we move on to the third IELTS band descriptor is grammatical range and accuracy. So there are two words, range and accuracy. Accuracy simply means grammatically right? Then your range, it means you're giving different sentence structure, ranging from simple, complex, conditional, passive. So from simple, for example, someone can say, he went to school. That's simple. Complex is when you're adding some cohesive device like because, in addition, moreover, therefore. So when you say I went to school because I wanted to study, so complex, you make it complex. And condition is when if I hadn't gone to school, I wanted to be educated by now. So that's the if. And then passive. Passive is when something is done. For instance, bricks are brought to the factory, so it's passive. So then, and then finally, pronunciation, please, that intonation is very, very important. What does that mean? For example, I went to the school. So that's the intonation that I keep talking about and teaching to my students. And then the accent, guys, never force accent. And then the words need to be pronounced clearly. That's why I always tell my students to speak slowly so that you can allow your brain to really process those words and not keep on, because the moment you just begin eating words, for example, if I'm to eat a word, words pronounced clearly, you see, just say, speak every word separately by moving slowly, not so slow to lose concentration, but you could just say words pronounced clearly, not joined or editing them. Like, get what I mean? Don't try to join words when you're speaking. So now let's go into summary. Number one, speak smoothly or easily, that's fluency and coherence. Two, wide range of IELTS vocabulary and skills resource. This includes synonyms, abbreviated vocabulary, idioms. Number three, different grammar sentences correctly. They have to be correct. Number four, pronounce words clearly. Okay. So now, let's now move on to. My apologies. Let's now move on to the real speaking test, guys. Taking place here at Clever PC YouTube channel. The candidate is Samantha. The candidate number. Alright, good. So now the examiner will first start by asking you your name. Alright, then your identification card. Yeah, these are not part of their marks, but it's just more of creating a rapport. Please show me your identification. Alright, thank you so much. Now let's see first. Look through. If you see here one, an apartment. So here, she was asked, do you live in a house or an apartment? First, listen to what she had to say. I live in a house. I live in a house. Really? Do you live when you say I live? Well, should have said I reside in a 2-bedroom house, which is located. I love it because so and so. So try to expand those answers, giving the other formula that I gave you, the answer, the reason, and also the example. Right? What do you write about your home?
One thing I like about my home is makes me feel at peace. I like the calmness in the environment, the tango, and it me feel that peace.
And how is your neighborhood?
Neighborhood in a home. It just okay. No one in heart.
As you can see, she was asked, how is your neighborhood? Hey, she said my neighborhood is what? That means she lacks some vocabulary, some descriptive vocabulary. So should have said, well, the place where I live is serene. I love it because there are a number of fancy restaurants. So try to really expand those answers and avoid using the examiner's words by all circumstances.
Everyone, Nicole,
In notes very bad later. So write some notes about this topic for 1 minute, and thereafter I'll stop you and then request you to talk about that topic, this topic and all the related questions for 2 minutes. You have to complete the full 2 minutes. So now here is the question. Describe a person you look. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to part 2, this is what you have to do. They will give you 1 minute first, think about your answers. The moment they give you that minute, just give anyone like there are no correct answers on IELTS. So number 1, he or she is. So you first answer this. How he has influenced to answer this. How you got to know him, answer this. Explain how he or she has changed you. So you have to really write so fast. So if a person like, let me say the president of a country, you can just talk about their background, talk about a little bit as you try to expand on each of them. So the moment you start speaking, you have to speak for the full 2 minutes. Don't stop. Do not stop until the examiner stops you. So even if the examiner stops you when you don't answer the number 4, it's still alright. So do not get scared, but you have to complete stuff. Two, your role model.
you don't know about ourselves. You can talk.
So when you're explaining, in part 2, try to add in some cohesive devices. I'm gonna show you cohesive devices shortly when we are done with correcting this. Alright.
What?
Let's first look at part 3. This is part 3. Part 3, they ask you some, these questions will resemble those of part of task 2, writing. So they'll be complicated questions. This question, do you think people today are more or less willing to help others than in the past? So you have to give your opinion. You could say, I personally believe, from my perspective, I would say members of the society nowadays, or people nowadays, are abbreviated to assisting others compared to long ago. For instance, if I can give you an example, so try to vary your vocabulary, give those examples, explain, try to paraphrase in other words. What are the benefits of doing voluntary work? So benefits, concept, advantages, pros, strength, they're all the same things. Voluntary work would say doing works of charity. You see? However, this economist,
But because everything he works someone.
there's a question she was asked, why do some people enjoy helping others? If you've watched the video, she was like, I personally, they're not asking about you, they're asking about people. Actually, in part 3, you're talking about other people. Now it's no longer you. Part 1 is the one which is personal. So another thing is that this when I asked her in part 1, what is your favorite best place you have ever been to?
In Uganda.
And then she said Mara in Uganda. So there was nothing to mark. I wanted to mark her fluency and coherence, exclude resource, grammatical and accuracy and pronunciation. Like, Mara, so what? What's the best place you've ever been to? The most interesting area that I've ever visited is Mara. simply because of its serene vegetation, its breathtaking views of the natural landscapes. So you try to put in those words. That's what we want. And like I always tell you guys, the moment you are succeeding and doing well on task 2 writing, by the time you come to speaking will just be a piece of cake. So yeah.
Very, very true because without teamwork and
Is teamwork more important in some jobs than others? Very, very true. Like, what are you answering? Is teamwork more important in some jobs than others? You could say absolutely yes. I would definitely agree with that. Simply because working together, strengthens colleagues, thereby improving on productivity of the companies.
I mean,
All right, now if I'm to score her fluency and coherence, fluency was fluent, their pauses were natural. Yes, they weren't. If we go to coherence, she lacked some cohesive devices. Is when she said truth be told, which was fine. That was a booster. Yes, that's it's like a negative. Truth be told, you're telling something the truth, so it might sound negative. So if you go to like score resource, there was no paraphrasing, should score less. Grammatical and accuracy or sentences were mostly simple. Even when she used complex, she said not only does but so and so. She missed the word but also. So it's not only but also. To find the pronunciation, she lacked intonation. I don't know if her intonation was in the hands, but it has to be audible. Anyway, then now let's move on to what we call the boosters. Alright, cohesive devices. These are gonna make your sentences coherent. If you're adding something in addition, you could say also, moreover, besides that, don't to mention. Now you could use these words in especially part 2 and most especially part 3. Because part 3 is like the last lap. Examiner will stretch you to the limits. Examples you could say, for instance, such as like contrasting. You could say however, on the other hand, although, despite the fact, reasons or effects. You could say because, as a result, hence, therefore. Opinions, you could say I believe that, personally, from my perspective. So all those ones are all correct. If you're emphasizing, you can say in fact, actually, as a matter of fact. So now let's look at boosters. Boosters just come in when you ask the question, but then you don't have an immediate answer. So that's when boosters come in. So they reduce on that, on those awkward pauses. So you could say to be honest. Let me see. That's an interesting question. That's an embarrassing question. I actually don't have an answer to that. But if you ask me, I would say, if I had to choose, I would say, believe or not. So yes, and yes, that's what we only want from you guys. If you can just take a recap. Fluency and coherence. Are you speaking smoothly? Let's pauses, coherent. Is everything making sense? Are you using the cohesive devices? Next source. Are you paraphrasing the question? That's what you often look for in next source. Using some topic related vocabulary. We move to grammatical range. Are you varying your sentences, especially in part 2? Then pronunciation, is there intonation? Like you shouldn't be flat, you should vary your intonation. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this marks the and I hope you guys have gained something. Keep practicing, stand in front of a mirror if you are alone. Try to record your answers. Alright, remember we are not testing your ideas, we only are testing your English. Let it feel natural. Do not use some complex sentences that you are gonna stamp on. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching and have a great night.